It's the beginning of the book, so I don't really need to give you too much context. It might help to know that it's set in the 7th century in the north of England. The child's world changed late one afternoon, though she didn't know it. She lay at the edge of the hazel coppice, one cheek pressed to the moss that smelt of worm-cast, and the last of the sun, listening to the wind in the elms, rushing away from the day, to the jackdaws changing their call from outward, outward, to home now, home, to the rustle of the last frightened shrews scuttling under the layers of leaf fall before the owls began their hunt. From far away came the indignant honking of geese as the goosegill herded them back inside the wattle fence, and the child knew, in the wordless way that 3-year-olds reckon time, that soon Onan would come and find her and Cian and hurry them back. Onan, some left-wise cousin of Ceredig King, always hurried, but the child, Hild, did not. She liked the rhythm of her days. Time alone, Cian didn't count, and time by the fire, listening to the murmur of British and Anglish, and even Irish. She liked time at the edges of things, the edge of the crowd, the edge of the pool, the edge of the wood, where all must pass, but none quite belonged. The jackdaw cries faded, the geese quieted, the wind cooled. She sat up. Cian? Cian, sitting cross-legged as a 7-year-old could, and Hild as yet could not, looked up from the hazel switch he was stripping. She said, "Where's Onan?" He swished his stick and said, "I shall hit a tree," as the Gododin once swung at the wicked Brunei. But the elm's soft sigh was becoming a low roar in the rush of early evening, and she didn't care about wicked war bands defeated in the long ago. "I want Onan." "I could make a sword for you too," he said. "You shall be Branwen." "I don't want a sword," she said. "I want Onan." He sighed and stood. "We'll go now, if you're frightened." She frowned. She wasn't frightened. She was 3. She had her own shoes. Then she heard firm, tidy footsteps on the woodcutter's path, and she laughed. "Onan!" But even as Cian's mother came into view, Hild frowned again. Onan was not hurrying. Indeed, Onan took a moment to smooth her hair, and at that Hild and Cian stepped close together. Onan stopped before Hild. "Your father is dead." Hild looked at Cian. He would know what this meant. "The prince is dead," he said. Onan looked from one to the other. "You'll not be wanting to call him prince now." Far away, a settling jackdaw cawed once. "Da is prince," Hild said. "He is." He was. With a strong thumb, Onan wiped a smear of dirt from Hild's cheekbone. "Little prickle, the Lord Herr Erich was our prince indeed, but he'll not be back, and your troubles now are just begun." Troubles. Hild knew of troubles from songs. "We go to your lady mother. Keep a quiet mouth and a bright mind. I know you're able, and Cian, bide by me. The high folk won't need us in their business just now." Cian swished at an imaginary foe. "High folk," he said. In the same tone he said, "Feed the pigs," when Onan told him to. But he also rubbed the furrow under his nose with his knuckle, as he did when he tried not to cry. Hild put her arm around him. They didn't quite meet, but she squeezed as hard as she could, and then they were wrapped around by Onan's arms, Onan's cloak, Onan's smell, wool and woman and toasted malt, and Hild knew she'd been brewing beer, and the afternoon was almost ordinary again. "Us," Cian said, and hugged Hild hard. "We are us." "We are us," Hild repeated, though she wasn't sure what he meant. In the hall, with Ceredig King and Hild's mother, the Lady Berguswith, were 2 men. The smell of travel, of horse, was clearly on them, and their bright checked cloaks were much muddied at hem and seat. Breguswyth, distaff tucked under her left arm and rolling her fine yarn spindle down her thigh with her right, stared absently at the fire, though Hild knew, even as her mother's fingers were busy, teasing out the yarn, her attention was focused on Ceredig King, who laughed and leaned from his stool and let firelight wink on the thick talk around his neck. Onan pushed Hild forward. The visitors, both slight, with magnificent moustaches and the air of brothers, turned. "Ah," said the taller one, in British, strange British, from the west. "You have your father's hair." "Ifing chestnut," her mother always called it, and her outside one big prickliness like a chestnut too, Onan would say, and they'd laugh. No one was laughing now but Ceredig, and it was his laugh because I am king laugh, the one for important visitors, to show ease in his own hall. And then the stranger looked beyond Hild. "And who's this?" Hild twisted to look. Cian had followed her into the firelight, ready to snatch her back as he had done in spring, when the ram had charged as she got too near. "He is nobody," said her mother, in English, "my woman's boy." And as she turned, with that long, careless grace that made the strangers look, Onan put her arm around Cian and tugged him gently back into the shadow. But this visitor was quicker than most. "Wait," he said, "you." He crooked his finger, and Onan and Cian stepped back into the light. "Your name?" "Onan, Lord." "And this is your son?" "He is, Lord." "And yourself, Onan? You were born here?" "Indeed, Lord. 26 years since." She stood a little prouder. "I am cousin to Ceredig King." "You're all cousins in this benighted wood," said the second stranger. But he was already turning away and beckoning for the first to do likewise. And Hild understood that although her mother and Onan had told nothing but the truth, the visitors had been fed an essential lie.